Jake Mitchell wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the broken engine in front of him. The cargo ship was old and beaten up, just like most of the ships that came to Meridian Outpost for repairs. He had been fixing ships for 3 years, now ever since the war ended. It was quiet work, and Jake liked quiet. The space station floated in the darkness between 2 small planets. Not many people came here unless they had to. That was fine with Jake. He had seen enough people during the war. Too many people had died because of choices he made. Now he just wanted to fix things instead of breaking them. His workshop was small but clean. Tools hung in neat rows on the walls. Everything had its place. Jake had learned that keeping things organized helped keep his mind calm. When his hands were busy with work, the bad memories stayed away. A soft beep came from his computer. Jake looked up from the engine parts scattered on his workbench. A new message had arrived. That was strange. Jake never got messages. The few people who knew him also knew he did not like to talk about the past. He walked over to his desk and sat down. The message was encrypted with military-grade security. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Only very important people use that kind of protection. He entered his old military codes, hoping they still worked. The message opened slowly. Inside was just a set of numbers, coordinates for a place far out in space. Below the numbers were 4 simple words. The debt is remembered. Jake stared at the screen. A debt? He did not owe money to anyone. He lived simply and paid his bills on time. What debt could this be about? Then a holographic image appeared above his desk. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The image showed a young girl with blue skin and silver markings on her temples. She looked older now, maybe in her 20s, but Jake would never forget that face. Zara. The name hit him like a punch to the chest. Jake had not thought about her in years. He had tried very hard not to think about her. Thinking about Zara meant thinking about the war, and thinking about the war meant remembering all the terrible things that happened on Kepler 452b. Jake closed his eyes and the memories came flooding back. He was 22 years old again, wearing the uniform of a Terran Federation combat engineer. The battle had been going on for 6 days. The Krillian Empire and the Federation were fighting over a small colony world that neither side really needed. But wars were not always about need. Corporal Jake Mitchell had been ordered to blow up a bridge. It was a simple job. Plant the charges, set the timer, get out. But when he reached the bridge, he found the wreckage of a civilian transport ship. The ship had been caught in the crossfire and crashed near the bridge supports. His commanding officer, Lieutenant Barnes, had been clear. No survivors, Mitchell. We can't spare men for rescue work. Blow the bridge and move out. But as Jake set up his explosives, he heard something. A voice calling for help. A young voice. Scared. Jake should have followed orders. Good soldiers followed orders. But something made him climb into the burning wreckage of the transport ship. Maybe it was the fear in that voice. Maybe it was because he had a younger sister back on Earth. He found her trapped under a piece of metal, a Krillian girl no more than 16 years old. Her blue skin was covered in cuts and her silver temple markings were dim with pain. She looked up at Jake with wide, frightened eyes. "Please," she whispered in broken English. "Please help me." Jake knew he should leave her. She was the enemy. His orders were clear, but looking at her frightened face, all he could see was a scared kid who needed help. He pulled the metal beam off her legs and carried her out of the wreckage. She was so light, so fragile. How could someone so small be his enemy? Jake hid her in an old supply bunker near the landing zone. He brought her food and water when he could. She told him her name was Zara. She had been traveling with her family when the war reached their world. Her parents were dead now. She was alone. For 3 days, Jake kept her hidden while the battle raged around them. He used his engineering skills to fix a small escape pod. On the last night before his unit was ordered to leave the planet, he helped her into the pod. "Where will I go?" she asked, still speaking that careful, broken English. Jake pulled his compass from his pocket. It was old and silver, a gift from his grandfather. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her small blue hands. When you're older, when you're safe, find the good humans. Not all of us are like this war. She looked at the compass, then at Jake. Why did you save me? Jake did not have a good answer. Because it was the right thing to do. The escape pod launched just before dawn. Jake watched it disappear into the dark sky and hoped she would make it to safety. Then he planted his charges and blew up the bridge just like he was supposed to. Lieutenant Barnes never asked where Jake had been during those 3 days. Maybe he knew. Maybe he did not care. The war ended 2 years later, and Jake never heard what happened to the blue girl with the silver markings. Until now. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the holographic image again. Zara was older now, but it was definitely her. The same kind eyes, the same determined expression. But something was different. She looked important now. Powerful. The coordinates in the message pointed to a place Jake had never heard of, far beyond the edge of known space. What was she doing out there? And what debt was she talking about? Jake saved the message and turned off his computer. Outside his workshop window, he could see the stars scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, the scared girl he had, saved 10 years ago, was waiting for him. He looked at his tools, at his quiet workshop, at the simple life he had built for himself. Then he thought about Zara's frightened face in that burning transport ship and the compass he had given her. Maybe it was time to find out what had happened to the good humans she was supposed to find. Maybe it was time to pay a debt he did not even know he owed. Jake's small transport ship moved through empty space toward the coordinates from Zara's message. He had been traveling for 5 days now, using old smuggler routes to avoid Federation patrols. The last thing he needed was questions about where he was going. The ship was nothing special. Jake had bought it cheap from a trader who needed fast repairs. It was slow, and the food recycler made everything taste like metal, but it would get him where he needed to go. On the 6th day, his sensors started picking up something strange. At first, Jake thought it was a malfunction. The readings did not make sense. There were too many ships in one place and they were too big. As he got closer, Jake saw something that made him forget to breathe. Hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation around a massive space station. But these were not Federation ships or Krillian warships. These vessels looked like nothing Jake had ever seen. The ships had smooth, curved surfaces that seemed to flow like water. Some were made of what looked like living crystal that glowed with soft light. Others appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic shapes that pulsed gently in the darkness. At the center of the fleet was the largest ship Jake had ever seen. It was easily 10 times bigger than a Federation battleship, but it did not look threatening. Instead of weapon ports and armor plating, it had graceful spires and gardens visible through transparent sections of the hull. Jake's radio crackled to life. Unknown vessel, you are entering protected space. State your identity and purpose. The voice was calm and professional, but Jake could tell it was not human. This is Jake Mitchell. I received a message to come here. There was a pause. Then, another voice came on the radio, and this one Jake recognized. Jake, is that really you? Zara? Permission granted to dock in Bay 7. Welcome to New Harmony, Jake. I have been waiting for you. A beam of soft light reached out from the massive ship and gently pulled Jake's transport toward an opening in the hull. As he passed through the docking bay entrance, Jake saw crews of beings he had never imagined. Tall, thin creatures with 4 arms worked alongside short, furry beings with large eyes. Floating jellyfish-like entities drifted through the air, their tentacles manipulating tools with impossible precision. And everywhere, Jake saw the same silver markings that Zara had on her temples. His ship settled onto a landing pad with barely a bump. Jake gathered his few belongings and walked to the airlock. When it opened, he found himself facing an honor guard of 12 beings from 6 different species. They all wore the same simple white uniforms with silver trim. At the center of the group stood Zara, but she was not the frightened girl Jake remembered. This Zara stood tall and confident, wearing robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself. The silver markings on her temples were bright now, forming intricate patterns that moved and shifted as Jake watched. "Hello, Jake," she said, and her Voice was exactly as he remembered, kind and careful but stronger now. "Thank you for coming." Jake did not know what to say. The scared refugee he had saved was now clearly someone very important. "Zara, what is all this? Who are you now?" She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young girl he had helped 10 years ago. "I am Empress Zila of the United Protectorates, but to you, I will always be Zara, the girl you saved when you could have left me to die." The honor guard led them through corridors that were more like gardens than ship passageways. Plants from dozens of worlds grew in carefully tended beds, and small streams of clear water ran along the floors. The air smelled of flowers and growing things. "This is incredible," Jake said, looking around in wonder. "How did you build all this?" "We did not build it," Zara replied. "We grew it. The Protectorates are not like the Federation or the Old Empire. We do not conquer worlds. We invite them to join us. Each species brings their own gifts and knowledge." They entered a large room with a transparent ceiling that showed the stars above. Comfortable chairs were arranged in a circle, and a small fountain bubbled quietly in the center. It felt more like a living room than a throne room. Zara sat down and gestured for Jake to do the same. "Tell me, what do you know about what has happened since the war ended?" Jake shrugged. "Not much. I keep to myself. The Federation and what is left of the Krillian Empire signed a peace treaty. Some border disputes, but nothing major." "Why?" Zara leaned forward, her expression becoming serious. "Because something is coming that will make our old war look like a small disagreement between children." She waved her hand and a holographic display appeared above the fountain. It showed a star map of the galaxy, with different colored dots marking various territories. "These red areas have gone dark in the past year. Entire star systems, Jake. Billions of lives just gone." Jake studied the map. The red areas formed a rough line moving toward inhabited space. "What happened to them?" "We call them the Void. Seekers. Ancient machines that consume everything in their path. They break down matter at the atomic level and use it to build more of themselves. They have been sleeping for millions of years, but something woke them up." The hologram zoomed in on one of the red areas. Jake could see the empty space where stars used to be. "How do you know all this?" "Because the Protectorates have been watching them. When I left Kepler 452b in that escape pod, I did not go to a human world. I went to a place called Haven, where refugees from many species gathered. I learned about the galaxy beyond the war between your people and mine." Zara stood and walked to the transparent ceiling, looking up at the stars. "I spent years traveling, learning from teachers of a dozen different species. I discovered that the universe is full of wonders that our wars prevented us from seeing. But I also learned about the Void Seekers." "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "I am just a mechanic now. I fix broken ships." Zara turned back to him, and Jake saw something in her eyes that made his stomach tighten. Fear. Because the Federation does not believe the threat is real. They think the Protectorates are just another enemy trying to trick them, and the Krillians who survived the war are too weak and scattered to help. "What do you want me to do about it?" "I want you to go back to Earth and convince your people to join us. The Void Seekers will reach Federation space in less than a year. When they do, no single species will be strong enough to stop them." Jake felt the weight of what she was asking. "They will not listen to me. I am nobody special." Zara walked back to her chair and sat down. From a pocket in her robes, she pulled out something that made Jake's heart skip a beat. His grandfather's compass, still shining silver after all these years. "You are the human who saved my life when you could have followed orders and left me to die. You are the human who gave me this compass and told me to find the good humans. You are the human who showed me that your species is capable of great kindness." She held the compass out to him, but Jake did not take it. "I kept this for 10 years as a reminder that individual choices can change everything. Your choice to save me led to the creation of the Protectorates. Your choice gave hope to dozens of species that had lost faith in the possibility of peace." Jake stared at the compass. "I just helped a scared kid. Anyone would have done the same." "No, Jake. Anyone would have followed orders. You chose compassion over duty. That is why the Federation might listen to you. That is why you are the only human who can convince them that the Protectorates are not their enemy. Jake finally reached out and took the compass. It felt heavier than he remembered. What if they do not believe me? What if they think this is all some kind of trick? Zara's expression grew grave. Then we will all face the Void Seekers alone. And when they come, they will not care about the differences between human and Krillian, between Federation and Protectorate. They will consume us all equally. Outside the transparent ceiling, the stars seemed brighter than before. But Jake now knew that some of those lights had already gone out forever, swallowed by an ancient hunger that was moving steadily toward everything he had ever known. The scared girl he had saved was now an empress, and she was asking him to help save the galaxy. Jake stood in the briefing room of Federation Command on Earth, looking at the faces of the most powerful people in human space. Admiral Lisa Chang sat at the head of the table, her expression cold and suspicious. General Paul Stone leaned back, in his chair with his arms crossed, clearly not believing a word Jake had said. "Let me understand this correctly," Admiral Chang said slowly. "You want us to believe that the refugee girl you supposedly saved 10 years ago is now the leader of some alien alliance? And that we should surrender our independence to join this Protectorate?" "I am not asking you to surrender anything," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice calm. "I am asking you to consider an alliance. The Void Seekers are real, Admiral. They have already destroyed dozens of star systems." General Stone laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Convenient timing, do you not think? Just when the Federation is getting back on its feet after the war, mysterious aliens show up with a doomsday story. Sounds like a classic invasion strategy to me." Jake had been in this room for 3 hours and he was getting nowhere. The Federation leaders had listened to his story with growing skepticism. Even showing them the holographic evidence Zara had given him did not change their minds. "The Krillians tried to trick us for 20 years, Admiral Chang continued. Shape-shifting spies, fake peace offers, false flag operations. Why should we trust aliens now?" "Because these are not Krillians," Jake said firmly. "The Protectorates include dozens of species, including Krillians who want peace. They have technology that could help us defend ourselves. Or technology that could be used to control us," General Stone added. "I have read your file, Mitchell. You disobeyed direct orders during the war. You have a history of putting alien lives before human interests." Jake felt his temper rising, but before he could respond, the door opened. Captain Amy Mitchell walked in, still wearing her flight suit. Jake's sister looked tired and angry. "Sorry I'm late," Amy said to Admiral Chang. "We just finished dealing with another pirate raid in the outer colonies. What did I miss?" "Your brother is trying to convince us to join an alien empire, General," Stone said with a smirk. Amy looked at Jake with disappointment. "Is that true?" "It is not an empire," Jake protested. "It is an alliance of equals, and we need their help, Amy. Something is coming that we cannot fight alone." Amy sat down heavily. "Dad died fighting aliens, Jake. Thousands of good soldiers died because we trusted alien promises before. I will not make that mistake again." The argument continued for another hour, going in circles. No matter what evidence Jake presented, the Federation leaders found reasons to doubt it. Finally, Admiral Chang called for a break. Jake stepped out, onto the observation deck overlooking Earth's capital city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful, but Jake could not shake the image of empty space where stars used to be. "You are wasting your time." Jake turned to see Dr. Helen Ross walking toward him. Helen had been his girlfriend before the war, back when they were both young and thought they could change the universe. Now she was Earth's leading expert on alien technology. "Hello, Helen," Jake said quietly. "I heard about your presentation in there. They think you have lost your mind." Helen stood beside him at the railing. "But I have been analyzing the data you brought back. The energy signatures from those dead systems. I have never seen anything like them." "So you believe me?" Helen was quiet for a moment. "I believe something destroyed those star systems. Whether it is these void seekers or something else, I do not know. but the pattern is moving toward us. Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the building. Emergency lights flashed red as automated voices announced, "All personnel to emergency stations. Incoming hostile contact, this is not a drill." Jake and Helen rushed back to the command center, where Admiral Chang was already coordinating the response. On the main screen, long-range sensors showed something approaching the outer edge of the solar system. "What are we looking at?" Admiral Chang demanded. Lieutenant Kyle Davis, the sensor operator, looked confused. "Unknown contacts, Admiral. 3 objects moving faster than anything in our databases. They are not responding to communication attempts." "Krillian ships?" General Stone asked. "No, sir. The energy signatures are completely unknown." Jake felt his blood turn cold as he watched the sensor data. The approaching objects were not ships at all. They were geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change as they moved through space, and they were heading straight for Earth. "Those are Void Seeker scouts," Jake said quietly. Admiral Chang spun around. "What did you say?" "Void Seeker reconnaissance units. Zara showed me recordings of them. They are testing our defenses." "General," Stone grabbed Jake by the arm. "If this is some kind of setup, Mitchell—" "It is not a setup." Jake pulled free. "Contact the Protectorate fleet. They can help." "We do not need alien help," Admiral Chang declared. "All Federation ships intercept course, weapons free." On the screen, they watched as 6 Federation destroyers moved to engage the strange objects. The human ships opened fire with plasma cannons and missile salvos. The weapons hit their targets and seemed to cause damage, but the Void Seeker scouts adapted quickly. The geometric shapes suddenly sprouted what looked like tendrils of dark energy. The tendrils reached out and touched the Federation ships. Within seconds, the destroyers began to change. Their hulls became dark and twisted. Their weapons turned on the remaining human vessels. "They are converting our ships," Helen whispered in horror. Jake watched in sick fascination as the Void Seekers demonstrated their true power. They did not just destroy their enemies. They absorbed them, turned them into more of themselves. The remaining Federation ships retreated, but 2 destroyers and a cruiser were already lost. The converted vessels joined the scout formation and began moving deeper into the solar system. "Admiral, we need to evacuate the outer colonies," Lieutenant Davis reported. "At their current speed, they will reach Mars in 6 hours. Admiral Chang looked pale but determined. "Send word to all Federation ships, full mobilization. We fight them here." "You cannot fight them with conventional weapons," Jake said urgently. "You saw what happened. They turn our own ships against us." "Then what do you suggest?" General Stone snapped. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the approaching threat. More Void Seeker contacts were appearing at the edge of sensor range. This was just the beginning. "Contact Empress Zila. Tell her we need immediate assistance. The Protectorates have weapons designed specifically to fight the Void Seekers." Admiral Chang hesitated. Around the command center, officers were receiving reports of more Federation ships being converted. The situation was getting worse by the minute. "Admiral," Amy said from her position at the communications console, "we just lost contact with the Mars defense grid. The scouts have reached the outer planet." Jake could see the terrible mathematics playing out on the tactical display. Every ship the Void Seekers converted made them stronger. Every human weapon they absorbed gave them new capabilities. The Federation was not just losing this battle. They were making the enemy more powerful. "We have maybe 6 hours before they reach Earth," Jake said quietly. "You can spend those hours fighting a war you cannot win, or you can let me contact people who know how to fight this enemy." Admiral Chang looked at the reports streaming in from across the solar system. Federation ships were being overwhelmed despite their brave resistance. The military machine that had fought the Krillians for 20 years was being dismantled piece by piece. Finally, she nodded. "Make the call." Jake activated his emergency communicator, the one Zara had given him before he left New Harmony. "This is Jake Mitchell calling Empress Zila. We need help. The Void Seekers are here." The response came immediately. "Jake, we have been monitoring the situation. Protectorate ships are already on their way. Hold your position and do not let your people use nuclear weapons. That will only make the Void Seekers stronger. General Stone overheard and turned to Admiral Chang. Nuclear weapons are our last resort. If these aliens are telling us not to use them, they are trying to save us from making a fatal mistake, Jake interrupted. Nuclear energy is exactly what the Void Seekers feed on. Outside the windows of the command center, Jake could see lights in the sky that should not have been there. The Void Seekers were coming, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. The question was whether they would face it alone, or with the help of the scared girl Jake had saved 10 years ago. The Protectorate fleet arrived 3 hours after Jake's emergency call. Jake watched from the observation deck as ships unlike anything in Federation databases dropped out of hyperspace around Earth. Some vessels looked like living crystal formations. Others appeared to be made of flowing water held in impossible shapes. Admiral Chang stood beside him, her expression a mixture of awe and worry. There must be 50 ships out there. Are they here to help us or invade us? Help, Jake said firmly, though he understood her concern. The Protectorate vessels were massive and clearly more advanced than anything humanity had built. On the main display, they could see the approaching Void Seeker formation. What had started as 3 scouts was now a force of 20 converted Federation ships plus the original geometric entities. The Dark Fleet moved steadily toward Earth, growing stronger with each vessel they absorbed. Incoming transmission from the Protectorate flagship, Lieutenant Davis announced. Zara's face appeared on the screen, but she was not alone. Behind her stood beings from several different species, all wearing the silver temple markings that identified them as Protectorate commanders. Admiral Chang, Zara said formally. I am Empress Zila. We are here to assist in the defense of your world, but we need your ships to follow our tactical plan exactly. Admiral Chang stepped forward. What kind of plan? A tall, four-armed being moved to stand beside Zara. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. I am Commander Lyral of the Zephyrite Defense Corps. Void Seekers adapt to direct confrontation, but they have difficulty processing coordinated attacks from multiple species using different energy types. What does that mean in simple terms? General Stone demanded. A creature that looked like living flame flickered into view. It means we confuse them. Human ships attack with kinetic weapons while Nerillian vessels use sonic disruption. Zephyrite crystals provide energy shielding, while Vortan phase shifters plant charges inside enemy hulls. Jake could see the Federation officers struggling to understand. They were used to straightforward battles where humans fought other humans with similar weapons and tactics. The Protectorate way of fighting was completely different. We need your ships to take specific positions, Zara continued. Our tactical computer will coordinate the attack to maximize confusion among the Void Seeker collective consciousness. Admiral Chang looked uncertain. We do not take orders from aliens. You are not taking orders, Jake said quickly. You are accepting tactical advice from people who have actually fought these things before. Before Admiral Chang could respond, alarm sounded again. The Void Seeker fleet had changed course and was now heading directly for a Federation colony on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. They are going after the research station, Amy said from her position. 3,000 civilians, including families. Admiral Chang made a quick decision. All available ships intercept course for Titan. We protect our people. Wait, Zara said urgently. If you attack them directly, you will lose more ships. Let us demonstrate the coordinated approach. We do not have time for demonstrations, General Stone snapped. Those are human lives at stake. Jake watched the tactical display with growing dread. 12 Federation ships were racing toward Titan, determined to protect the colony. The Void Seekers were waiting for them, and Jake knew what would happen when conventional human weapons met the adaptive alien machines. Admiral, please, Jake pleaded. Give the Protectorates a chance to show you how this works. But it was too late. The Federation ships had engaged the Void Seekers near Titan's orbit. Jake watched helplessly as the human vessels opened fire with everything they had. The initial salvo seemed effective, damaging several converted ships and destroying one of the geometric entities. Then the Void Seekers adapted. Their hulls became reflective, bouncing energy weapons back at the attackers. Dark tendrils reached out toward the Federation ships, beginning the conversion process. "We are losing the Aurora and the Constellation," Amy reported, her voice tight, with professional control despite watching her fellow officers being absorbed. Suddenly, the Protectorate ships moved. Jake had never seen anything like their coordinated attack. Crystalline vessels fired beams of coherent light, while aquatic-looking ships released clouds of what looked like living water. Gaseous beings that Jake could barely see phased through solid matter and appeared inside the Void Seeker formations. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Seekers, which had been adapting successfully to human weapons, seemed confused by the multiple attack types. Their adaptive algorithms could not process sonic attacks, energy absorption, kinetic bombardment, and phase-shifting assault all at the same time. One by one, the Void Seeker entities began to shut down, not destroyed, but deactivated. The converted Federation ships stopped their aggressive maneuvers and drifted in space, their crews presumably safe but unconscious. "Titan colony is secure," reported Commander Lyral. "Void Seeker units have been neutralized. We are beginning recovery operations." For the converted vessels, the command center was silent except for the quiet hum of computers. Admiral Chang stared at the tactical display, watching as Protectorate ships carefully approached the drifting Federation vessels. "How?" she asked quietly. Zara answered from the screen. "Void Seekers are incredibly intelligent, but they think like machines. They analyze patterns and adapt to them. When faced with too many different patterns at once, they become overloaded and shut down temporarily." "Temporarily?" General Stone asked. "The effect lasts about 6 hours. The flame being," Commander explained. "Enough time to evacuate populations and regroup for the next attack. But this was just a scouting force. The main Void Seeker fleet is much larger." Jake felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Amy looking at him with a new expression. Not the anger and disappointment he had grown used to, but something that might have been respect. "The Protectorate saved our people," she said quietly. "Those crews on the converted ships, and they would have been lost forever if your alien friends had not intervened." "They are not my alien friends," Jake replied. "They are our potential allies." Admiral Chang was studying the tactical reports coming in from the rescue operation. Protectorate medical teams were bringing unconscious Federation crew members back to consciousness using techniques that human doctors had never seen. "Commander Vespa is awake," Amy reported. "He says the last thing he remembers is his ship being touched by dark energy, then nothing until the Protectorate medics revived him." Dr. Helen Ross moved to stand beside Jake. "I have been analyzing the energy readings from that battle. The Protectorate weapons are not just different from ours. They are designed specifically to counter Void Seeker adaptation protocols." "Which means they have been preparing for this fight for a long time," Jake said. Helen nodded. "The question is, are we ready to admit we need help?" The question was answered by an emergency alert from the outer sensor network. Lieutenant Davis looked up from his console with a pale face. "Admiral, we have new contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Multiple signatures, size unknown." The main display shifted to show the sensor data. What they saw made everyone in the room fall silent. Hundreds of dark shapes were emerging from hyperspace, forming into a vast fleet that dwarfed both the Federation and Protectorate forces. "The main Void Seeker fleet," Zara said grimly from the communication screen. "We estimate over 300 entities plus any ships they have converted from other species." Admiral Chang looked at the overwhelming enemy force, then at the Protectorate, ships that had just saved Titan colony. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the weight of command in it. "Empress Zila, Admiral Lisa Chang of the Terran Federation. We formally request alliance with the United Protectorates for the defense of Earth and all human colonies." "Alliance accepted," Zara replied immediately. "But Admiral, you should know that even with our combined forces, this will be the most difficult battle any of our species has ever fought." Jake watched as human and alien ships began moving into coordinated defensive positions around Earth. The scared girl he had saved was now commanding a fleet in defense of his homeworld. And despite the overwhelming odds, for the first time since This crisis began. Jake felt something that might have been hope. The real test was just beginning. The final battle for Earth began at dawn. Jake stood in the combined command center aboard Zara's flagship, watching as 300 Void Seeker entities moved steadily toward humanity's homeworld. The enemy fleet had grown during their journey through space, absorbing ships and stations from a dozen different species. They are not just trying to destroy us, Zara explained to the mixed human and alien command staff. They want to capture our combined knowledge and technology. If they succeed here, they will have everything they need to consume the entire galaxy. Admiral Chang studied the tactical display showing defensive positions around Earth. Federation ships were positioned at key points, but they were vastly outnumbered. What are our chances of success? Commander Lyral's crystal form flickered with dim light. Unknown. We have never faced a Void Seeker force this large. Our coordinated tactics work against small groups, but this, the four-armed being gestured at the approaching dark fleet with all of his hands in a gesture that clearly meant despair. Jake found himself thinking about his grandfather's compass, which now hung around his neck. The old man had given it to him with simple advice. When you are lost, it will point you toward home. But remember, sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way there. What if we are thinking about this wrong? Jake said suddenly. The command staff turned to look at him. Zara raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You said the Void Seekers want to capture our technology and knowledge. What if we give them something they cannot digest? Dr. Helen Ross leaned forward from her position at the science station. Explain. Jake moved to the tactical display and pointed at Earth. The Void Seekers adapt by analyzing patterns and incorporating them into their collective. But what if we give them a pattern that breaks their thinking? Such as? Admiral Chang asked. Individual sacrifice. The willingness to die for others even when it makes no logical sense. Jake looked around the room at the faces of humans and aliens who had been enemies just hours ago. They can understand optimal outcomes and efficient resource use, but can they understand why someone would throw their life away to save strangers? Zara's eyes widened as she grasped what Jake was suggesting. You want to use humanity's stubborn, self-destructive heroism as a weapon? Not just humanity, Jake replied. Every species here has stories of individuals who gave everything for others. The Void Seekers have probably never encountered that kind of thinking on this scale. Commander Lyral's crystal form brightened. It is possible. Their collective consciousness seeks to preserve and enhance itself. True sacrifice, giving up individual existence for no personal gain, might indeed overload their processing capabilities. Before anyone could respond further, Lieutenant Davis's voice crackled over the communication system. All stations, the Void Seekers have begun their assault. They are targeting the lunar defense platforms first. The main display showed dark shapes moving through space toward Earth's moon. As they approached the defense stations, the platforms opened fire with everything they had. For a few minutes, it looked like the human weapons might hold them back. Then the Void Seekers reached the stations and began their conversion process. Jake watched in sick fascination as the familiar dark tendrils touched the metal structures and began changing them into more enemy vessels. Luna Base reports they are evacuating. Amy's voice came over the radio from her position commanding a Federation destroyer squadron. But the Void Seekers are moving too fast. They will not make it. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Admiral Chang, I request permission to coordinate a rescue operation. Jake, you are not a military officer. Admiral Chang protested. No, but I understand how both human and protectorate ships work, and I think I know how to implement the sacrifice strategy. Zara studied his face carefully. What are you planning? Luna Base has 3,000 civilians and minimal defenses, but it also has the largest fusion reactor in the solar system. If we can get the civilians out and overload that reactor at the exact moment the Void Seekers try to convert it, the explosion would destroy everything in lunar orbit, Admiral Chang said, including any Void Seeker entities trying to process the fusion technology, Jake finished. But we need someone to stay behind and trigger the overload manually. The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what Jake was suggesting. It was a suicide mission. I will do it. Amy said over the radio. Her voice was calm and determined. My squadron is closest to Luna Base. No, Jake said quickly. Amy, you have more to live for than I do. Dad died fighting aliens, Jake. Maybe it is time someone in our family died saving them. Before Jake could argue, Amy's destroyer squadron was already moving toward the moon. On the tactical display, Jake could see his sister's ship leading the charge toward the overrun defense platforms. The rescue operation was unlike anything in Federation tactical manuals. Amy's human ships provided covering fire while Protectorate vessels used their advanced shielding to protect the evacuation transports. Zephyrite crystals created energy barriers around the fleeing civilian ships, while Nerillion sonic disruptors confused the Void Seeker conversion attempts. For 20 minutes, the coordinated fleet held the line around Luna Base. Thousands of the civilians were evacuated to safety, but the Void Seekers kept coming and their numbers seemed endless. Jake, Amy's voice crackled over the radio. Static was building up as her ship took damage. I am at the reactor core. All civilians are clear. Tell me when. Jake looked at the tactical display. The main Void Seeker fleet was approaching Earth's atmosphere. If Amy triggered the reactor now, it would destroy dozens of enemy entities and eliminate their largest processing facility. But it would also kill his sister. Wait for my signal, Jake said, his voice breaking. The next few minutes felt like hours. Federation and Protectorate ships fought desperately to hold back the Void Seeker advance. Jake watched as brave crews from a dozen species threw themselves against an enemy that grew stronger with every ship it absorbed. Now, Amy, Jake shouted, as the largest group of Void Seekers moved into position around the lunar reactor. The explosion lit up the solar system like a new sun. When the light faded, Luna Base and everything around it was gone. Along with it, 47 Void Seeker entities and countless converted ships had been destroyed. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Amy's ship and 3 other Federation vessels had been caught in the blast. Jake felt tears on his cheeks as he watched the empty space where his sister had made her last stand. Around the command center, human and alien officers stood in respectful silence. She saved us all, Zara said quietly. The sacrifice had an unexpected effect on the remaining Void Seekers. Their perfect coordination began to break down as they tried to process what had happened. Their collective consciousness could not understand why Amy had chosen certain death to save strangers. They are confused, Commander Lyral reported with growing excitement. The sacrifice pattern is spreading through their network. They cannot adapt to it because it makes no logical sense to them. Dr. Helen Ross was monitoring the Void Seeker communications. Their command structure is failing. Individual entities are starting to act independently. Jake realized this was their chance. All ships implement random sacrifice protocols. Make decisions that prioritize others over optimal outcomes. What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Instead of following careful tactical plans, ships from both fleets began making choices based on protecting others rather than achieving victory. Federation destroyers rammed Void Seeker entities to save damaged Protectorate vessels. Alien ships used their last energy to shield human evacuation transports. The Void Seekers, designed to analyze and adapt to any logical pattern, could not cope with the deliberate illogic of self-sacrifice. One by one, their entities began shutting down as their collective consciousness overloaded. It is working, Zara said in amazement. They are actually shutting themselves down rather than trying to process the paradox of voluntary self-destruction. The battle ended not with a massive explosion, but with hundreds of Void Seeker entities simply going dark and drifting in space. The converted ships stopped their attacks and floated silently, their crews slowly waking up from the forced unconsciousness of conversion. In the aftermath, Jake found himself standing alone on the observation deck of Zara's flagship. Earth hung in space below, scarred but intact. The combined human and Protectorate fleet was gathering the deactivated Void Seeker entities for study. Zara joined him at the window. Dr. Ross believes we can reprogram the Void Seekers, turn them from destroyers into builders. They have the technology to repair the damage they caused. Jake nodded without taking his eyes off Earth. Amy would have liked that, turning the enemy into something helpful. She will be remembered as a hero by every species in the Protectorates, Zara said, gently. Her sacrifice saved not just Earth but the entire galaxy. From her robes, Zara pulled out Jake's grandfather's compass. I think it is time I returned this to you. Jake took the compass and felt its familiar weight. Why now? Because your journey is just beginning. The Federation has agreed to join the Protectorates as equal partners. Someone needs to serve as the first human ambassador to help our species learn to work together.